Hello everyone, and today we're back into another top 5, and we're going to be talking about the top 5 worst tanks in all of Loomian Legacy. This was one of the hardest lists to make because there's a lot of Loomians that could be considered tanks, but aren't. So I'm only including Loomians that are considered tanks on this list. So yeah, hopefully this top 5 is good. Let's head on to this top 5. Number 5 on the list is actually going to be Hoganash. Now, Hoganash may be number 5 on the list, but it actually isn't even that bad. Honestly, there aren't many bad tanks in Loomian Legacy, so let's talk about Hoganash. It has very good defense on both sides. It has a move that can give it melee defense increase, and it has Rejuvenate, so it does have the stereotypical pieces to become a good tank. Although there are quite a few flaws that are keeping it back, mainly for its low health stat, mainly that Fiery Fondant gives you recoil. It kind of struggles. If you hurt yourself to get a melee defense increase, it kind of makes you struggle in living kits in the future. And while it does have Rejuvenate to counter it, it still struggles, considering that it also has a relatively slow speed for a tank. And I know speed should not matter for a tank too much, but I don't know, 41 is just really slow. Hoganash does have some upside though. It does hit harder than stereotypical tanks, has some solid coverage, and like I said, has great defenses on both sides, but the flaws often hold Hoganash back. Not to mention that there are so many great tanks in Loomian Legacy, so Hoganash often gets overlooked. It isn't a bad tank, but it definitely deserves to be number 5 on the top 5 worst tanks list. So yeah, number 4 onto this list is actually going to be Ventation. I think everyone expected Ventation to be number 1, but honestly, I don't think it's that bad. I still think it's bad, but I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. Has an extremely high melee defense with 2 very good abilities. Can heal with Soft Water, has Battering Ram to hit hard, has Brace for setup, and Geyser can cause burns. It even has Frost Beam for coverage if you really want it. There's a lot actually going for Ventation, but there are a lot of flaws with it, just like with Hoganash. Its healing option is Soft Water, and it's not that effective. Not to mention that it also completely drains your energy. It also doesn't have the highest health stat, at least compared to other tanks in Loomian Legacy. And it's also extremely weak on the range side. Also, there's a certain Bar Blast that exists that kind of outplays Ventation in every way. Not to say that Ventation cannot do work. Has a very good ability that can chip opposing Loomians and can even burn melee attackers, but it just doesn't work out for the most part. Ventation is solid, but not amazing. It's definitely a Loomian that its flaws definitely overtake its pros. That's why a lot of people consider it the worst tank in Loomian Legacy. But it misses the top 3 because it has shown in battles that it can definitely do some work. But that's all it really has for it. Number 3 onto the list is actually going to be Iguana. A lot of people might be shocked that Iguana's on the list, considering that it has a couple immunities. But the problem is, Electric Light is horrible, offensively and defensively. Defensively, you might think, oh, the electric typing is good. But that combining with the light typing just doesn't make it that good. Apart from Zulong, a lot of faster Loomians can hit you really hard. And while it is a very good range check, I mean, it has good bulk on both sides, and that range defense, my goodness, that range defense is extremely high. You can't really hit any other Loomians really hard. And you don't really have any good utility besides Tase. The problem with Tase is you're never going to fully guarantee the paralyze. And even if you slow down the opposing Loomians, it doesn't really matter. There's a lot of other Loomian Legacy tanks that can poison, burn, freeze. They're a lot more effective than paralyzing them. Not to mention that there are certain Loomians that can straight up wall you. I mean, Earth types, Plant types, Buneki, other Iguanas. I mean, Lightning Rod, aka Iguana, gets walled by so many things that just really doesn't make Iguana a legitimate threat. And that's why it's number 3 on the list. While it has some pros, it has so many cons holding it back. Number 2 onto the list might be a shocker, but it's going to be Blowtox. Honestly, Blowtox is probably better than every tank on this list. There is one reason, and I mean one reason why Blowtox is this high on the list. Bar Blast exists. And Barblast is better than Blowtox in almost every single way. I mean, it has better melee defense, better range defense, more health. The only thing Blowtox has going for it is it has more speed than Barblast, which for a tank doesn't really matter that much. Honestly, it's better to run an offensive Blowtox than it is to run a bulky one. And while it does have some moves, like Icicle Traps and Poison and a great defensive typing, the fact that Barblast exists and that it's better than Blowtox in every single way just gives you no reason to use Blowtox. It's really sad because Blowtox is an amazing tank. It deserves to be amazing. If Barblast wasn't in the game, Blowtox would honestly be considered a top 5 tank. But with Barblast in the game, and not to mention all the other melee tanks like Sidragon and like Tundrolin existing, Blowtox kind of just falls flat. And while it does have some utility, it can never be fully utilized when Barblast exists. So, yeah, unfortunately, Blowtox is number 2. It's a good Loomian, but it gets replaced by pretty much almost anything. And Barblast in particular. Honorable mentions on these lists. So, these are some of the Loomians that just miss. Wiki Wiki. If Wiki Wiki was considered a tank, this would be number 1. Easily. No doubt. The problem is, I don't really consider Wiki Wiki a tank. It has an extremely high health stat, but its defenses are way too low. I don't consider Wiki Wiki a tank. If I considered it a tank, though, this would be number 1 on the list. Worst Loomian in the game. No doubt about it. Moving on. Nothing else to say about this sack of trash. The other honorable mention is Festifer, and I was honestly thinking about putting Festifer on the list. But it does have quite a few pros that keeps it off the list. Has Regift, has pretty high defenses on both sides, a high health stat, and also, while its defensive typing isn't good, it does have Rejuvenate and a couple utility plays that can make it effective. So, Festifer has grown on me. It just misses the top 5 worst tanks in Loomian Legacy. The worst tank in Loomian Legacy is Florant. That's if you even consider Florant a tank. I mean, it has a very good health stat and very good defenses on both sides. And most people run this as a sap plant dodge user with its secret ability. One problem with Florant. Its defensive typing really sucks. It's the most predictable Loomian in the entire game. I mean, sap plant, dodge, poison, dodge. I mean, that's pretty much all that Florant does. Sap plant, dodge. And while it does have some moves to run an offensive version, it only has 65 range attacks, so it really doesn't work neither. Its defensive typing is absolutely horrible. You almost always have 3 or 4 Loomians on your team that can hit Florant super effectively. Not to mention that plant types can kind of just counter sap plant, so it really doesn't help neither. Florant is bad. It's definitely one of the worst Loomians in the game. It would be number 2 if I considered Wiki Wiki a tank, but it definitely deserves to be on this list. Florant is by far the worst tank in the game, not to mention that there are other Loomians that can use sap plant better. Yes, this thing has some moves, but it can never utilize them. With its really bad stats, really bad defensive typing, and also just sheer predictability, makes Florant the worst tank in the entirety of Loomian Legacy. So, yeah, Florant, number 1 on the list. And here it is, the worst tank in all of Loomian Legacy. What are y'all opinions, and what are the top 5 worst tanks in y'all opinion? Because I know y'all opinions will be different, because there are so many Loomians that just barely missed the list. But hey, that's what happens. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, me talking about the top 5 worst tanks in all of Loomian Legacy, and I will see y'all all later. Bye-bye!